We begin the news in Europe, where Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has renewed his call for a sea and air truce following a massive Russian attack overnight, which left at least 18 people wounded, including 4 children. The strikes targeted key energy infrastructure, further straining Ukraine's daily operations. In response, French Mirage fighter jets were deployed for the first time, assisting in repelling the assault. This escalation comes after the U.S. suspended military aid to Ukraine, including intelligence sharing. Despite mounting challenges, Zelenskyy is scheduled to travel to Saudi Arabia next week for talks with U.S. officials in pursuit of a peaceful resolution. The Kremlin has condemned the planned discussion, labeling them confrontational and warning of possible retaliation. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has expressed support for his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy, his call for a sea and air truce in the ongoing war. Speaking at an EU-organized meeting on Friday, Erdogan stressed the importance of a ceasefire to build confidence between both sides. He also highlighted Turkey's ongoing efforts to ensure safe navigation in the Black Sea. His remarks come in the wake of a large-scale Russian assault on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which prompted Zelenskyy's renewed plea for silence in the skies and sea. French President Emmanuel Macron echoed this sentiment, proposing a one-month pause on attacks targeting air, marine and energy infrastructure. Erdogan reiterated that for any peace deal to be lasting, both parties must actively involve in negotiations.
Bir an önce ateşkes sağlanması ve taraflar arasında güven artırıcı önlem olarak havada ve denizde saldırıların durdurulması fikrini destekliyor.
For more on this, I'm joined by international correspondent Afia Hagen. Afia, you're welcome once again. Thank you. Good evening. So if you tell us what the latest is from the front line in Ukraine, please.
Well, as you so rightly said, Ukraine has really been pounded by Russian attacks overnight, and Ukraine has accused Russia of deliberately targeting civilians and infrastructure. So officials in Odessa and Kharkiv say these waves of attacks have left infrastructure damaged and homes on fire. Now, the Kremlin has denied that the overnight attack was in response to a ceasefire proposal that Emmanuel Macron put forward. Now, Donald Trump has been talking about this today. Earlier on in the day, he said he's considering sanctions and tariffs on Russia following that wave of overnight strikes. He said, based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it's too late. Thank you. So he said that on his Truth social site. He was also talking in the Oval Office earlier on today, and he acknowledged, like we said, that the Ukraine is suffering. And yes, he also said that he reiterated the point that Russia is bombing the heck out of the Ukraine, and he expressed uncertainty over whether Ukraine wants to settle the war, adding that the situation could end up as World War III. So we see him there sort of being slightly more harsh on Russia than he has been in the past, threatening sanctions and tariffs. You know, he loves the word tariffs. He's been throwing it about quite a lot since the beginning of his presidency.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. Tariff seems to be the new thing on the board. Everything tariff. Maybe you might even solve climate change with tariffs. But peace talks are taking place next week in Saudi Arabia. What may happen during that summit?
That's right. So delegations are heading to Riyadh potentially next week. This is delegations from Russia, Ukraine and the United States, may potentially be joined by France and the United Kingdom. Diplomats are heading there to talk about a potential peace deal. Now, Donald Trump said he's also going to Saudi Arabia, and it's thought Zelenskyy will be there as well. We don't know if the two of them are going to meet Remember, the last time they did meet was last week, Friday, 1 week ago today, when they had that disastrous Oval Office meeting where it looks like Zelenskyy had been ambushed essentially by Trump and J.D. Vance. But the delegations are going to meet on Tuesday to discuss what Washington is calling an initial ceasefire with Russia. Zelenskyy is saying that he's hoping for a meaningful meeting that Kyiv is working towards fast and lasting peace.
Now, Europe have been discussing increasing their defense capabilities. What has been decided so far?
Yes, that's right. European leaders met yesterday at a huge defence summit, and they have agreed a plan which they are calling ReArm, which is basically 800 billion euros worth of defence capabilities for European countries, potentially to come together as one, big army to defend Europe if needed. Now, Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the EU, was saying that there's a clear and present danger, and Europe is determined to act with skill, the speed and the resolve that the situation demands. She said that we are determined to invest more, to invest better, and invest faster together. From Paris to London to Brussels, we have shown we are willing and able to step up our joint efforts and to coordinate effectively, saying that today, that was yesterday, history is being written. Interesting that she said from Paris to London to Brussels. Remember, the UK isn't part of the European Union anymore, but it's thought that Keir Starmer is meeting with some European leaders today so that the UK can also be part of that deal.
Afia, once again, thank you very much, and a very good rest of the evening to you. Meanwhile, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has announced plans to implement mandatory military training for all adult men to strengthen national defense. This initiative aims to bolster the country's military reserve in response to evolving security challenges in Europe. Addressing the Polish parliament, Tusk emphasized the necessity of creating a reserve force capable of addressing potential threats, particularly given Poland's strategic position on NATO's eastern flank. The decision is influenced by concerns that a Russia victory in Ukraine could lead to further aggression toward neighboring countries like Poland. To support this initiative, President Andrzej Duda has proposed enshrining defense spending of at least 4% of GDP in the Constitution. Poland currently allocates 4.1% of its GDP to defense and plans to increase this to 4.7% this year.
Jak wiecie, było dużo argumentów, dla których świat chciał zablokować możliwość używania tej strasznej broni. Ale dzisiaj jesteśmy w sytuacji, w której Polska, i to mogę tu zadeklarować z pełną determinacją, wykorzystamy każdą dostępną możliwość, aby zwiększyć naszą obronność. Nie będziemy się oglądać mężczyzn, będziemy starali się do końca tego roku mieć już model gotowy, aby każdy dorosły mężczyzna w Polsce był szkolony na wypadek wojny, tak aby ta rezerwa była rzeczywiście porównywalna i adekwatna do ewentualnych
Traffic at Paris' busiest train station, Gare du Nord, was brought to a standstill on Friday after a World War II era bomb was discovered on tracks near the station. Now, the unexploded device was found during overnight maintenance work in the northern suburb of St. Denis, about 2.5 kilometers from the station. As authorities worked to safely deactivate the bomb, all rail services, including Eurostar and local trains, were suspended. Transport Minister Felipe Tabarot warned of significant disruptions throughout the day, urging passengers to avoid the station. This marks the second such incident in recent years, as unexploded ordnances from World War II continues to be discovered across France, occasionally causing major transportation delays. Passengers have been advised to reschedule their travel plans.
Happen like all over these cities. There's stuff under the ground that you can't that get discovered and everything like that, and it always happens. It's unlucky if it happens to you, but I mean, I don't want to get on a train that runs over any unexploded World War II ordnance. I would rather they clear that and then make sure it's safe to travel. So these things happen and you've just got to roll with it, I think.
It's okay, I guess. I was supposed to fly from Brussels today, from Charleroi, at 5, so I'm hoping that I can still make it. I had a Vigo, but I switched to Eurostar, although they told me now probably no trains today, so I'm expecting to miss my flight. But I'm here with my dog. The sun is shining, so it's fine.
Now let's also tell you that supporters at 16 climate activists who appealed their jail terms before the Court of Appeal are protesting on Friday against a ruling outside the court in London, where a British court reduced some of the heaviest sentences for climate activists involved in high-profile protests, but rejected appeals from 10 others seeking to overturn their convictions. The groups Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion have been responsible for disruptive demonstrations, including blocking traffic in London and targeting famous artworks to draw attention to climate change. In July, 5 activists were sentenced to up to 5 years in prison for conspiring to block the M25 motorway. On Friday, Lady Chief Justice Sue Carr reduced the sentence of Roger Hallam, co-founder of both groups, from 5 years to 4. Other sentences were also shortened, with some reduced by up to 18 months.
What's my reaction? Obviously, I'm very pleased for the 5 people who have had reductions in their sentences. Hopefully we will see some people coming out of prison very soon. So that in itself is good news. However, the actual ruling given by Judge Carr means that Just Stop Oil supporters will still end up in prison, do still face lengthy sentences, and still have no legal defences that they can call on to justify their actions, to put a proper, robust defence in court. They are essentially naked in court.
Will get angry. Like, if the government doesn't actually respond to protest, the protest will escalate, and that's not me asking people to escalate. That's what people will do when people get desperate, when the food runs out of the shops, when wars break out, when there is conflict. People will get, it will get worse if non-violent protest is suppressed and people are imprisoned.
Meanwhile, students in Athens have taken to the streets on Friday in protests as Greece's parliament prepares to vote on a no-confidence motion against the government over its handling of the country's deadliest rail disaster in 2023. The tragic incident occurred in February when a passenger train traveling from Athens to Thessaloniki collided with a freight train in Tempe, central Greece, killing 57 people and injuring many others. The protests reflect growing public outrage and demand for accountability, as many blame government mismanagement for the tragedy. The no-confidence motion is seen as a critical movement in the political fallout from the disaster, with calls for urgent reforms to the nation's rail safety system. We're on a short break now, and when we return, Trump issues threat of sanctions and tariffs on Russia. This and more after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In North America, a temporary reprieve in the trade battle between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. President Donald Trump has delayed some tariffs set to hit key industries, easing pressure on markets after a sharp sell-off. But he warns more tariffs are coming. For News Central, international correspondent Afia Hagen has the details.
President of Mexico, wonderful woman today.
After days of financial turmoil, President Trump has hit pause on some of his most controversial tariffs. The move delays duties on Canadian and Mexican imports under the North American Trade Agreement until April 2nd. Automakers in particular breathed a sigh of relief. Vehicles and parts cross borders multiple times during production, and Trump's move offers temporary protection for the industry.
It basically makes it more fair for our car manufacturers during the short-term period before April 2nd. April 2nd is a little bit different. That will be much more significant, but during this interim period, between now and April 2nd, this makes it much more favorable for our American car manufacturers.
President Trump denies that financial market pressure influenced his decision, though stocks have tumbled since the tariffs took effect on Tuesday. He insists this move is about protecting American workers. Canada responded quickly. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc announced that Ottawa will not impose a second wave of retaliatory tariffs on $125 billion worth of US goods, at least for now. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, however, warned that Canada remains in a trade war with Washington for the foreseeable future.
I can confirm that we will continue to be in a trade war that was launched by the United States for the foreseeable future. So Canadians should continue to buy Canadian, continue to stand up for each other, but we are trying to reduce the areas and the impact that these tariffs that the Americans are bringing in will have on Canadian workers.
Mexico, meanwhile, has struck a more conciliatory tone. Trump said he had a very good conversation with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and claimed tremendous progress on border security and drug trafficking, issues his administration linked to the trade measures. But there's no relief for steel and aluminium producers. Broad tariffs on those imports are still set to take effect next week, despite warnings from economists that blanket levies could slow growth and drive up inflation. Trump has defended tariffs as a way to strengthen US manufacturing and reduce trade imbalances, but the latest data suggests his trade policy may be having the opposite effect. The US trade deficit surged to a record high in January, rising 34% to $131.4 billion. With more tariffs expected on April the 2nd, businesses are bracing for further uncertainty. And with the market still reacting, pressure is mounting on Trump to clarify his long-term trade strategy. For News Central, I'm Afia Hagan.
Live now, joining us on the news to discuss this is a foreign policy analyst, Bulu Michael B. He joins from Rwanda, Kigali. Bulu, you're welcome again. Thank you for joining this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, how could temporarily lifting tariffs on Mexico and Canada affect trade between these countries and the U.S. in the future?
Well, it means that companies can continue to carry on their trade without extra cost, and it shows that the U.S. is willing to negotiate. I think we've been through this before, and it's happening again. The first time there was a pause, and then it comes up again. Trump comes up again and brings another tariff, and then they have the conversation, and then another pause. I think it's better for the U.S. president to have a conversation with the leaders of these countries before shocking the system in such drastic manner. And I think it's a wake-up call for countries like like Canada and Mexico to begin to look outward and not rely so much on the United States, because in recent time US is proving to be more of an unreliable partner than a reliable one. And I think what Trump is trying to do is trying to toward the footstep of Abraham Lincoln, who ruled between 1861 and 1865, if I'm correct. He's known for boosting the U.S. economy using tariffs, and Trump needs to understand that in that era they had horses and bayonets, but now we have supersonic jets and the internet, and things have changed, and the policies of that era may not entirely apply now. So it's not something that one should do in a hurry. It's supposed to sit down, be intentional about it, and map out a strategy for a street, set up a committee or something, do proper research, instead of appearing to be quite unstable. When he made the first declaration, we could see the NASDAQ plummeting, the record low, and this is not good for the U.S. economy. It's not good for the world as well.
Very interesting. You said it sounds like a book, The Bayonet versus the Internet. Bolu, if President Trump begins imposing tariffs based on what other nations charge the U.S. after April 2nd, what might happen to the U.S. economy and its international relations?
Well, since he's trying to retaliate, I think he will have started with that, because that would make more sense, in the sense that he can always defend it, that, you guys are imposing on us, we are doing the same. But it could also backfire for the U.S. economy, being that these countries that, they probably have some U.S. products that are exempt from tax or have low taxes, and then they might increase the taxes on those products. And the end result of that is that U.S. products become more expensive and less competitive in the market, and that's going to hurt the United States producers. So U.S. Industries like the auto industry relying on so much imports might get hurt badly, and they will transfer these tariffs and this cost of production to the consumer. So it means with the U.S. buyers, U.S. consumers would have to pay more for cars and things like that. And if you can remember the global economic meltdown, it started somewhat with the auto industry, and President Obama had to step in by issuing bailouts. So I understand that Trump's idea is to protect local industry and to kind of force companies to come into the U.S. to produce instead of sending their products in. But if this continues in the long run, it could be a full-blown trade war.
Well, Bolu, thank you very much for giving us your expert opinion on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday threatened new sanctions and tariffs on Russia over its bombardments of Ukraine. Now, this comes after previously suspending U.S. aid to Kiev in a stated bid to encourage diplomacy. President Trump stated this in comments published on the Truth social platform hours after Russia launched a massive drone and missile attack on Ukraine energy facilities on Friday. Trump wrote that he is strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy renewed calls for a mutual halt to aerial attacks on critical infrastructure following the largest Russian attack. His proposal to halt aerial bombardments on energy facilities builds on growing rhetoric from Kiev, Washington, and Moscow on halting the war, now in its fourth year. World Trade Organization Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has cautioned against panic amid the trade war sparked by U.S. tariffs, reassuring that the global trade system is not in chaos. Speaking at a panel discussion alongside former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, she emphasized that 80% of world trade continues to flow smoothly among other WTO members. Okonjo-Iweala's remarks came as tension arose over tariff disputes, but she remains confident in the resilience of the global trading system, highlighting the importance of collaboration and stability in addressing the challenges ahead.
I understand the enormous amount of concerns that people have about what is going on. But let me put it this way. As I said, I just came from meeting some administration officials. I came back yesterday in Washington. And I met with Commerce Secretary Lutnick. I met with Ambassador Jamieson Gray of the USTR. And the indications I got is that they remain part of WTO. They want to remain engaged. And I think this is something that should give us room to be, I don't want to use the word hopeful, but I think it gives us room to believe that the U.S. still finds some value in being able to engage with other members at the WTO. And that is one of the reasons I think we should keep calm, we should listen to their concerns, and we should see how we can use the instruments we have in the organization to try and meet some of the concerns they have.
And that's all on Beyond the Continent this evening. Now, to remember, you can send your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on your screens now. And do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. Also, remember, you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and of course, on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.